Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Foli Batibo, Senior News Anchor at Al Jazeera English. It is my privilege to guide you through this special session on education as the foundation of the new social contract. 30 years after the first World Summit for Social Development, we meet in Doha at a time of both extraordinary transformation and profound inequality. Education sits at the heart of this moment. It is the bridge between poverty and opportunity, exclusion and inclusion, stagnation and progress. This session will explore how education, which cuts across all three pillars of social development, can be reimagined to drive social justice, decent work for all, and inclusion in an age defined by digital transformation and artificial intelligence. We will hear from visionary leaders who have championed education as the cornerstone of sustainable development. And we will reflect on how the Doha political declaration can be translated into bold, practical action. It is my distinct honor to introduce our first keynote speaker. She is a long-time advocate for education, research, health, and opportunities for young people. A United Nations Sustainable Development Goals advocate, she campaigned for the establishment of the UN International Day to protect education from attack. Please welcome to the stage Her Highness Sheikha Mosa bint Nasser, UN SDG advocate, founder and chair of the Qatar Foundation and the Education Above All Foundation.
Bismillah Rahman.
In the name of Allah, most merciful, most compassionate. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this meeting. I am pleased to join you today at the Second World Summit for Social Development in Doha, where the international community has come together to envision a brighter, more human-centered future. A future where justice becomes the scale from which progress is measured, dignity serves as the guiding compass for policy, moving us beyond the dissonance of lofty promises towards real, measurable achievements. Building on the legacy of the first summit held 30 years ago in Copenhagen, we gather today to participate in one of the summit's sessions, Education as the Foundation of the New Social Contract. The summit held to tackle the issue of social development becomes all the more important in a world where we have demographic changes, widening social disparities, accelerating technological advancements, thereby worsening the crises affecting education. I assure you that the principles of the Copenhagen Declaration and its program of action, placing people at the center of social development, have not lost their relevance. Rather, emerging challenges, particularly in the field of education, have only reinforced the urgency of recommitting to these principles. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not wish to dwell on what is self-evident and what we all know to be true, but I believe it is time we stopped avoiding or evading fundamental questions, because asking the right questions enables us to find the right solutions. When we ask ourselves if finding sustainable solutions to the global challenges of social development is truly possible, and especially in developing countries, I believe that solutions are possible if we choose to act, and futile if we decide to be indifferent. How can social development achieve its purpose without first establishing the pillars of an inclusive justice that addresses root causes and identifies existing vulnerabilities? How can this be? There can be no development amidst discrimination, no stability with marginalization, and no prosperity amid exclusion. In light of this, the world must never accept the reality that there are 272 million out-of-school children, according to the 2023 UNESCO figures. And you can imagine how that number has increased over the last 2 years as a result of the bloody conflicts taking place in several locations across the world. These grim figures and statistics carry with them a distressing message, one that appeals to the conscience of humanity. They call for our immediate action to transform policies into actions and achievements. Social development, ladies and gentlemen, is not a fixed matrix, nor is it a set of hollow rhetoric or a publicity stunt or a facade masking veiled truth. Rather, it is the story of an individual who uplifts their community when given a fair chance and who achieves the extraordinary when granted an opportunity to innovate. Arabs have thousands of tales to tell here. Allow me to share with you one such story. The story of an Arab who was raised within his community and nurtured by its values. He dreamt one day of becoming an impactful citizen in the development of his homeland and region. However, he faced one roadblock after another, and in his many desperate attempts to overcome these obstacles, he decided to search for another country where he could fulfill his hopes and dreams. He searched for individual salvation after the collective dream proved unattainable. There, in his substitute homeland, his story of innovation and creativity begins. Meanwhile, our larger Arab region remains in a state of retrogression until it finds the best approach for social development that places the human being at its core. Ladies and gentlemen, much is said about development, but we often refrain from closely examining its true elements. Its most prominent pillar is human beings themselves, who make up the heart of development and its ultimate purpose. If we consider human beings our most valuable capital, then education remains the most enduring form of capital investment. It is the spring from which the streams of progress flow and the foundation upon which the pillars of sustainable development can be erected. Education is not merely one component that makes up the sectors of society. It is the sum of all sectors, for there can be no economy, politics, healthcare, culture, or even a sustainable ecosystem without education. And if we fail to advance education with innovative, sustainable solutions that align with the accelerating technological advances of our world, then no development project, be it economic, cultural, or social, will succeed, and we will remain trapped in the cycle of failure, regression, and powerlessness, and we will lose our footing in the landscape of development. While we bet on investments in education, we can better shape a future for humanity. Conversely, when we fail to recognize the importance of education and investing in it, we lose our compass, drifting away from progress. I am firmly convinced that success in achieving sustainable development is not only reserved for those with more abundant resources, but for those who possess the wisdom to invest and manage such resources effectively. This is the vision that drove us in Qatar to establish a path of development that places young people in their rightful role as shapers of the future, learners, innovators, entrepreneurs, and citizens engaged in decision-making. This inspiring vision has led to remarkable achievements, successfully utilizing natural resources in Qatar, empowering its human capital, and generating meaningful job opportunities that replace traditional job duplication. With a deep-rooted belief that the Sustainable Development Goals are interconnected, Qatar has exerted every effort to instill the foundations of peace and the pillars of diplomacy as the cornerstones of its social development goals. Ladies and gentlemen, there is another story. A story of a child robbed by an occupier of her most treasured possession, the closest to her heart, her pen. To her, that pen represented the key to her future and her little weapon against injustice and dispossession. Her pen was stolen, but her dream was not, and hope remained ablaze and glowing in her young heart. She gathered the ashes from the rubble that surrounds her and fashioned herself a pen and erected a tent from tattered fabric to create for herself and her friends a school that teaches them that letters are undefeated and that learning can happen amidst the rubble, in affirmation that life and resistance cannot be erased. And when a ceasefire was announced in Gaza, that child and her friends were among the first of children who raced, clutching their pens and tattered papers towards makeshift exam halls, despite the fact that over 90% of Gaza's schools were completely destroyed or rendered unfit. These children inherently recognized that education is not a luxury, but a necessity for survival, and a lifeline to a safe harbor away from fear, ignorance, aimlessness, and attempts to eradicate them. Education is the core pillar for development. There can be no development without knowledge, and no renaissance without an enlightened mind. Education is not a luxury, nor a privilege, nor a favor to be granted. It is a right, a responsibility, and a tool to liberate the mind, build human capacity, safeguard values, and generate ideas to reshape the world. Education, above all else, is an existential matter about a nation's existence or demise. To achieve a real sustainable development as we seek it, education must be recognized as equal in importance to development itself. Let us begin at schools, universities, laboratories, and libraries, where minds that build nations are shaped and futures are written. Futures free from exile and substitute homelands, and where pens are never snatched from the hands of children who dream of peace. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the stories of our Arab nations, each striving in their own way to forge their future. Some rise while others stumble. Familiar stories that resemble one another. Tales of nations, all of which march towards social progress. Their success varies depending on their ability to apply the formula for development. a formula composed of dreams, human potential, and the best use of natural resources. Its noble goal is to uplift human beings who can fully fulfill their material and spiritual needs. This is an ongoing effort that enables the individual to demand from their nations what is unattainable elsewhere, a sense of contentment in belonging and the legitimacy to dream of a future with unlimited potential. One that encompasses the breadth of the human condition, everything from the primordial cave to the mysterious frontiers of space, from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge. Let us dream of a more luminous dream, a shared dream, a dream that includes everyone, the dream of development. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you.
Thank you, Your Highness, for your inspiring vision on how education must anchor our global social contract. Thank you for your unwavering commitment to the empowerment of all through education. It is now my great privilege to invite His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, to deliver his keynote address. Under his leadership, the United Nations has placed education and social justice at the center of the 2030 Agenda, calling for a renewed global social contract grounded in solidarity, sustainability, and inclusion. Your Excellency, Secretary General.
Your Highness Sheikh Moza, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking Qatar, and in particular Sheikh Moza, which has long been a strong and generous champion of education and the urgent need to accelerate progress on Sustainable Development Goal 4. I appreciate the opportunity to shine a spotlight on this vital issue today. Education is the foundation of social progress. It is the engine of decent work and prosperity. It forges lasting pathways to inclusion and equality, especially for women and girls. And education is the best poverty-fighting tool we have. In short, education is the foundation of a renewed social contract, anchored in human rights, social justice, and inclusion. But the cracks in this vital foundation are becoming too large to ignore, and relentless pressures are making the gaps wider. The pressure of widening inequalities within and among nations, the pressure of a polarized and divided world where solidarity and solutions are in short supply, and the financial pressure of governments and global financial institutions unable to provide the level of support required to fund education systems that can reach every learner in developing countries. Despite progress, 272 million children and youth remain out of school, most of them in the world's poorest countries, with millions more in conflict zones. Even for those in classrooms, learning outcomes are falling, with reading proficiency declining for both primary and secondary students since the COVID-19 pandemic. Too many children leave school without the skills they need. Millions of learners lack access to digital tools, and girls in the poorest countries are least likely to attend upper secondary education. we face a dramatic teacher shortage, an estimated 44 million worldwide. And education can be an engine of transformation for societies and economies, but only if we can repair the cracks in this vital foundation and strengthen education systems for the future. I see 4 areas of urgent repair. First, we must repair the financing gap, which has swelled to $97 billion annually. Education is not a cost to be contained. It's a strategic and necessary investment in every society's future. Governments must dedicate a minimum of 15% of domestic revenue and 4% of gross domestic product to education. And developing countries must get the support they need to make these investments. This includes tripling the lending power of multilateral development banks, leveraging private finance, easing debt burdens, and reforming global financial institutions so they better meet the needs of developing countries that must have a much stronger representation in the boards of the financial institutions. Second, we must repair the access gap. From students in war zones and disaster areas, to migrants and refugees, to those living in poor and underserved communities, to girls and persons with disabilities, too many are denied their right to education. We must scale up investments in programs, infrastructure and technology that can reach every child with the learning and skills they need and deserve. This must include closing the gender gap once and for all. Education can be the great equalizer and support human rights and social justice for all, but only if we ensure no one is left behind. Third, we must repair the teacher gap. Teachers are on the front lines of education, but millions lack the support, tools and training they need to deliver inclusive and quality learning. Following the Transforming Education Summit, the high-level panel on the teaching profession developed concrete recommendations to ensure that every learner has access to a professionally trained, qualified and well-supported teacher. I call on all countries, teachers' unions and partners to help bring these recommendations to life in classrooms around the world. Finally, we must repair the quality gap. This means strengthening the foundation of learning, reading, writing, math and science. But quality education must go further, including critical thinking and problem solving so students learn how to learn. It must reconfigure education systems so people can learn throughout their lives. It must include skilling and reskilling and upskilling so people can contribute to the fast-growing digital and green economies. It must include entrepreneurial skills, and it must safely harness digital technology, including artificial intelligence, not to replace teachers, but to empower them, not to profit a few, but to benefit all. UNESCO has developed key recommendations on AI frameworks to help countries build capacity to deploy this technology safely and effectively in schools. We must ensure that technological innovations drive inclusive and accessible education systems everywhere. Your Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Doha Political Declaration adopted here provides fresh momentum in our efforts to end poverty, ensure full and productive employment and decent work, and social integration. Education is the most powerful tool we have to reach all of these goals, and indeed all of the Sustainable Development Goals. And it is a vital engine of transformation for countries, communities and people everywhere. Together, let's put quality education into the hands of every learner and every community in the world, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, for your powerful and inspiring remarks and for reminding us of the urgency of transforming education and aligning them with our shared goals of peace, inclusion, and sustainability. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we now turn to our high-level panel discussion where we'll explore how governments and global partners are putting this vision into practice, reimagining education as the foundation of a new social contract for the 21st century. I am honored to be joined by three distinguished heads of state who bring unique perspectives and leadership to this conversation. Please join me in welcoming to the stage His Excellency William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Bajram Begaj, President of the Republic of Albania, and His Excellency Surangel Whips Jr., President of Palau. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. It's a great honor to have you in Doha at this historic summit in Qatar, the second World Social Summit for Development. Your Excellency William Ruto, if I can start with you, Kenya has been at the forefront of digital learning initiatives. What lessons do you think other nations can draw from your experience in linking education with technology and job creation? And how can developing countries balance this urgent need for digital transformation that the Secretary General talked about, with also the need to ensure that education remains accessible and inclusive for all?
Thank you very much. I think I'll respond to both issues in one. First, I agree entirely that education is an investment. It is not a cost. And therefore, being the greatest enabler, being the single most important, powerful tool for empowerment to communities, societies, and nations, every shilling and every dollar invested in education is a dollar put in the right direction. Balancing between education, technology, and jobs is your ask. Number one is you start with policy. Make sure that there is a link, a direct link between education, digital economy, and how that translates into jobs. Number two is empowering the teacher. In Kenya, for example, we've had to retrain 300,000 teachers and equip them with technological knowledge, not so that technology can replace teachers, but that technology enhances learning. And by empowering the teacher, by ensuring that the teacher is retrained, technology understands benefits, internalizes, and understands technology, it becomes easier for there to be a connection between education and technology. And let me say that the most transformative thing we've done, for example, in Kenya, is to reform the whole education system so that we now are implementing a competence-based education and training, where learners, it's not just about what learners get to know, it is what they do with what they know. It's not just about exam passing, It is about competence. It's about innovation. It's about employability. And number three, it is not about getting a job. It is also about how to create jobs. So that whole system ensures that there is a link between education, technology, and jobs. And finally, technology helps us democratize education. I'll give you an example. In Kenya, Open University of Kenya, a university we started 2 years ago, now has 15,000 students from 70 countries learning 47 disciplines. We are estimating that in the next 2 years, it will be the largest university in Kenya. It is not only cost effective, but it democratizes education. Students from different parts of the country, from different nationalities across the globe become students. So there is a direct link between education and how technology can democratize education. And let me say this finally, that from my experience, in the last 2 years, we have not only implemented a new reformed education system, actualized what we call the competence-based education and training. We have also closed the teacher gap. We have hired 100,000 teachers by January. We had a gap of 116,000 teachers. And we have enhanced the budget by close to $1 billion in the last 3 years. So we are very clear that to be able to balance and equalize the fortunes of all our children, education is the one that balances between the children of the poor and the children of the rich. And that is why we've changed the curriculum, we've hired more teachers, we're putting more money in education.
Thank you so much, President Ruto, for telling us about Kenya's experience. President Bagaj, if I can come to you next. How do you see global partnerships, both North-South, but also South-South partnerships, helping ensure that education systems, including those in countries like Albania, prepare young people for the green and digital economies that President Ruto was talking about, those economies of the future?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. First, let me start by thanking Your Highness Sheikh Amuza for this excellent meeting and very right choice for the topic. Education is the cornerstone of our humanity and of course is a foundation of a new social contract of our world today. But for me, it is a backbone for our society. So never doubt to invest in education. If you invest $1 today in education, you'll get back much more tomorrow. So you cannot find that in other investment. As Secretary General said that education is not a privilege, is a right, and is a right for everyone, and no one can be left behind. So we have to be fully responsible, and it's shared responsibility for us to provide access for everyone, to provide quality of education for everyone, and of course to make a better society of tomorrow. Coming to your question, I think that North-South and South-South, our cooperation is very important, but on the other side, they are complementary. So I think that North-South can provide for those South countries expertise, can provide some access to the resources, and of course we have nowadays the technology that the North can provide to the South. On the other side, South to South have a lot to communicate with each other. We have to learn from each other's experience, and of course, we have to share our knowledge. On the other side, both South and North can provide building capacities for our societies, can provide strengthening our institutions, and of course, we can provide better policies for our people. Coming to Albania example, I'm coming from a small country, and of course President Ruto is coming more huge country, and for us it's very important to provide education, free education for everyone, and our policy for education is included and is fully aligned with SDGs that UN is providing, and of course fully aligned with the European Union education framework. So we provide education because in our society we think that when we speak with each other we say that the information is power. But for me, education and knowledge empower peoples, provide much more information and more capable people for facing the challenges that we might have nowadays. And challenges are a lot, and we cannot face those challenges alone, so we have to be together. And speaking about education and technology, I think that the forefront to be changed and to change their attitude about the way how we learn is the teachers. They have much more responsibility for the future.
Thank you so much, President Bagash. Thank you for that. Excellency Whips, the President of Palau, if I can come to you finally. As a leader of a small island nation on the front lines of climate change, how do you see education shaping the renewed social contract that we're talking about here in Doha, one that empowers young people with the skills they need and the resilience they need to sustain their communities, but also their economies in the face of growing challenges linked to the environment and the economy around the world, the global challenges?
There is no doubt that education transforms lives. And Your Highness Shikamoza, being here in Education City, seeing really what this incredible place is an example of what I think what we should be doing in all of our countries, making education a priority. I share this because I think back on my father's life. He was very poor and very young. He lost his parents. And when he lost his parents, one of the things that happened was he was taken out of school. He came back to school in 5th grade, struggled, was able to finally get a college degree, but it was so difficult for him. He tells me stories of him being hungry and going to class. So when I became president, one of the things that we thought was most important is how do we change our education system, focus on how we improve learning. Because we need more engineers to solve our problems. We talk about our challenges with climate change as small islands, but who are the people that are going to come up with the ideas? It's the kids that live with those challenges every day. So to do that, we said we need to change the way we think about education. We need to make sure that kids are excited about those institutions. They should be the best buildings in town. Kids should be excited about going to them. We said we need to make sure that they're not hungry. So they have free lunch, let's make sure they have free breakfast. When we go for the free breakfast, attendance went up, they showed up to school every day. It's the simple things. And then we said, well, one of the challenges we have, and I think all, is we have a lot of remote communities, small islands with not enough teachers. How do we get learning to those communities? The big towns were much better off than the outlying places. So we leveraged technology. using the internet, thanks to COVID, forced us all to use Zoom, we discovered that now we could have remote high schools, have remote communities that only had 5 students in a classroom now have a high school, because that one student can stay there and go to high school being connected to the high school in the big town. So it's making those little changes to empower and give our kids opportunities to be able to unlock their potential. Because, you know, one of the things that my Minister of Education always says is every one of the children has a unique gift, and our responsibility is to unlock that gift. And I think that's really sometimes what we lack the ability to do, is unlock that potential.
Thank you very much, President Whips, for that. Before we end, perhaps just a final comment in a few seconds from each one of you. As we look ahead to implementing the Doha Political Declaration, President Ruto, what decisive step do you believe can make education the driving force of opportunity and inclusion?
We have so much agreed on what the declaration should look like. And that is the easier part. The more difficult part is to put money, action, and effort into getting every item of the declaration to reality. There are many kids out there who are not in class. I discovered in my own case that most of the students in the university came from the middle class. Children from difficult backgrounds, vulnerable families, they were most likely not in university. And that is why we changed the financing model for university. We came up with a student-centered model so that we get more children. We did affirmative action, more children from vulnerable backgrounds to access university education. And finally, we also discovered that people who live in informal settlements, in rural areas, did not have laboratories, did not have adequate classrooms. And as a result, we rolled out a program to do another 23,000 classrooms, 1,600 laboratories, especially in neighborhoods that were vulnerable. So again, targeted affirmative action in areas that are challenged, and necessary, and therefore associating with what has been said in the declaration is something that we need to match what we have agreed with action.
Targeted affirmative action. Thank you so much, President Ruto. President Bigaj, your final thoughts. What decisive action do we need to take after this Doha Political Declaration to make sure that education is indeed the driving force of opportunity and inclusion for all?
I think we have to do more. Instead of making those nice speeches everywhere, we have to do actions much more. So I think people deserve that, and based on the SDGs, that no one can be left behind. Everyone has the right to have education, and we have to work about that and to get in action.
Thank you very much, President Bigaj. President Whips, you have the final word. What decisive action should we be taking after Doha?
Well, I think we need to start by really putting those action into words, and Secretary General Gutierrez reminded us that if we're not spending 15% of our budget on education or 4% of our GDP, then we're not really serious about it. So we need to go home. We need to make sure as leaders that that is a minimum, and we need to take action, because every dollar spent on our children is an investment that will return billions back into our nation. So,
thank you very much, President Whips. Thank you, Your Excellencies, for your rich insights and for your contributions. We've heard today something that is clear, and that is education must not stand apart from social development. It must drive it. May the commitments voiced here in Doha translate into concrete action, into classrooms around the world and policies across the globe. Thank you all very much once again for joining us, and thank you for all of you.